Alright, we are going to cover Photoshop and what makes it unique from other programs. Photoshop is what's called a raster program, which means that the graphics are created by rows and columns. And I can show you that. If you look at this ellipse right here, if you zoom in on it, you can see that it's made up of columns and rows of pixels with colors in them. That's what a raster program is, and that's what Photoshop is. The difference between that and something like, this is Illustrator. I've just moved into Illustrator, and this is an ellipse, but this is not made of pixels and columns and rows. This is simply made of a path, a vector path, what we call a vector path with points, and it only has 4 points, and then these curves are described by a mathematical formula that describes the angle of the curve. What that means is the difference between Photoshop here and Illustrator here is that you can, in Illustrator, you can just zoom in all day long. You could put this design on the side of a bus and it would always be sharp and clear. Whereas with Photoshop, eventually it's going to get pixely. At a certain size it'll look really good. Like there, it looks fine. But once you blow it up, you're going to see these stair-step pixels. Okay, so this is raster, this is vector, and that's the difference. So you may say, you may think, well, vector is a lot better because you can just zoom in forever and it never gets pixely. Why would you ever use raster? Well, raster is good for things that need subtlety, and they need gradation, color gradations from light to dark. For instance, you might have something like this, a cute little puppy, and this is shot at high resolution. You can't see the pixels, but when you zoom in, just keep zooming, you can see the pixels and you can see the subtlety of color that you can get because you have all these pixels. Now the reason this doesn't look jaggy is because it's what's called high resolution. Resolution has to do with how many of these pixels are in a square inch, and you get to decide that in Photoshop. You get to go to image at the top of your screen, and you get to decide how many of these are going to be in a square inch. The greater the number of pixels in a square inch, the higher the resolution will be and the more detail that you will capture. This is a very high resolution image right here, so you don't see the pixels at all, whereas this is very low resolution and you can see them pretty easily. Now the trade-off is a file like this is very small in size. It's not a huge file. This one is 1 megabyte. This one is almost 9 megabytes. So there is a trade-off there in size. Okay, so that is the difference between vector and raster.